Jaden? All right, let's go. I'd like to call this board meeting to order for Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard.
Here.
Ms. Nazario. Here. Ms. Washington. Here. Mr. Sturgill.
Here.
Mr. Ferguson.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item up is the oath of office for our new board members. Would you please administer the
I'm
oath?
sorry, Mr. Brown, I can't hear you. I really can't.
The bigger one.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
First item up is the oath of office for our new board members. Would you please administer the oath?
I would be honored. See if I can do it without a microphone here. Those days are long gone. All right, in alphabetical order, we'll start. Ferguson, you can stand up and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as board member of the Board of Education of the Lorain City School District, Lorain County, Ohio, to the best of your ability, in accordance with laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted? Do you, during your continuance in office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do so.
Thank you, sir. Shake your hand, but I don't look the Reverend Washington, raise your hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as board member of the Board of Education of the Lorain City School District, Lorain County, Ohio, to the best of your ability, in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified? Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Graham.
Nope, thank you. If I could just very, very briefly welcome our two new board members to the Board of Education. I have known Jay and Barbie now for 6-7 years, whatever it's been. I knew them very early on in my first tour because they were so actively engaged in everything happening in the district. And I tell you what, no matter where you look, you're not going to find two people who are more dedicated or supportive or love the people of Lorain more than those two. So I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Next item, number 5, nomination and election of president of the board. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Bill Sturgill.
I'll second.
Is there any other nominations? We will close the nomination process. And procedural, we have Bill Sturgill been nominated as president of the board. Guess we need a roll call?
We need a motion to close the nomination.
We need a motion to close the nomination.
So move.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario. Yes. Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
It's closed. Motion is closed. So, actually, we move on to the vice president at this point in time, right? We need to declare Bill as the president of the board for the 2022 season. We've already taken the roll call, so congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Ms. Raymond? Ms. Raymond?
Yes, please.
Mr. Sturgill, if you be so kind, rise and raise your right hand. Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as board president of the Board of Education of the Lorain City School District, Lorain County, Ohio, to to the best of your ability in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office until your successor is elected and qualified. Congratulations and thank you.
And now we need a nomination of election of vice president.
I would like to nominate Courtney Nazario for Vice President.
Second?
Been nominated and seconded for Courtney Nazario. Is there any other nominations? Need a motion to close the nominating process?
So moved.
Support.
And a roll call.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
I will abstain. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
We have the vote as presidency, and at this point, we need a sworn in, please.
Ms. Nazario, raise your right hand. And do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Board Vice President of the Board of Education of the Lorain City School District, Lorain County, Ohio, to the best of your ability in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office until your successor is elected and qualified. Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations, Gordon. So now our next business is the fixing of the day, time, and place of our regular board meetings. Is there a nomination, or is there a time? Are we changing times? Are we sticking with the times? Any suggestions? As far as our date for our meetings and time for our meetings and location?
If nobody has any objections, I would like the second and fourth Monday of each month.
We're going back to Monday?
Second and fourth Monday of each month. And usually our same location, which would be up in the media center, but we can move it anywhere. At Lorain High School?
At 5?
5, yeah.
All right. Is everybody in tune with that? Do we have a nomination for, so Bill made that. Is there a second?
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
So the next item is 8.01, and actually, all the other items can go on a consent agenda if we choose. So we can get a nomination for 8.01 through 16.03 for the rest of our agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. Ms. Washington? Ms. Washington?
I need just a second, please. Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
And Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda is accepted. So now, for this organizational meeting, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make
So
a
moved.
motion to adjourn.
So it was actually motioned by Bill, seconded by Barbie. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario? Yes. And Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
And I think we turn this over to Bill at this point. Thank you. I don't think we'll need to do the pledge again, but we will need to do another roll call.
Okay, so. I'll call to order. Okay. I'm going to call the board meeting for January 4th, the regular board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Here.
Ms. Nazario? Here. Ms. Washington?
Here.
Mr. Sturgill?
Here.
And Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Okay, approve and sign the minutes. Need a motion for that?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Sturgill, or I'm sorry, Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Nazario, yes, and Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Report and recommendations of the treasurer.
And there is one recommendation from the treasurer, and I'd like for the board to consider for approval, item 8.01, the financial update from the auditor, the tax budget for 22-23 tax year.
Okay, we need a motion for that?
So moved.
Support. Any discussion?
This is a routine matter that needs to be done by, I believe, is it January 20th? So our goal is to get it approved to make sure that we've got meetings between now and then.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill,
Yes.
Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Nazario, yes, and Ms. Washington.
Yes.
Okay, seeing as though we don't have anything else on this, right? I mean,
There are no recommendations from me, but Mr. Sturgill, if you don't mind, I'd like to give a brief update on what's going on. And I apologize, I'm having a tough time talking too. Just what's happening during the course of this week and what led us to this point. And we try to share some communication with people, but I know sometimes things are lost in all the emails and messages. We want to make sure we're presenting to the board what we're doing, why you understand why we did it, but how we're choosing to spend our time during this week is, you know that the students are not in, they're not to report until January 10th, and that's in line with the conversation that we have. We've had many conversations over break, and we brought in Dr. Prakash Ganesh. Again, he is the person that held our hands through the first 2 years, I guess, of COVID, and just kind of sought his advice again. Now, again, his credentials, he was just promoted to some health guru position in Calga County. He is a practicing doctor, medical doctor. He's also a professor at Case Medical School, and I was reminded today that he also presented to the United Nations on COVID. So we picked his brain. Everything he had to say was in line with our health commissioner, but he gave us some of his own personal recommendations, and they were to hold off on bringing kids back to school. That the Omicron strain is very contagious. We expect, because of the holidays, that there would be a spike, so we timed it candidly around Christmas to be the 10-day piece to kind of, the 2-week piece to come after that. So now we're expected for our students to come back on the 10th. During that time, we're doing a lot of preparations to make sure we're ready for hybrid online learning, remote learning, and all the other things in the middle. And I know one of the questions I'm getting from staff the most is, when are we going to decide? Based on the information we have today, we plan on having students back in school on Monday. There are some things that we need to do in order to be able to flip that switch, is how we've described it, to go full remote or hybrid. And right now, there's just a few pieces. Not everyone takes their devices home every day. Or, for example, our younger students typically don't. And our older students, and it was a conscious decision that we need to buy more chargers. So all those issues should be worked out here in the next few days. So we'll be able to flip that switch should we need to early next week. But I'm going to invite Ross into the conversation about what we're doing with staff this week as we plan. And he was in a meeting that ended right before this one and can give you more updated information than I can. So Ross, if you would, please.
Yeah, we've got a few things that we're working on right now to make sure we're ready for any number of things. But the first part is we want to make sure that our staff has time to prepare and plan for if we do end up needing to go remote. So to make sure that everything electronically, Google Classroom is updated, meeting classroom resource links are updated, that we're just ready if we need to go to a remote approach. So our teachers have individual and collaborative planning time right now, and for each of the next 4 days built in to make sure that we're ready to go with that. We are also working to make sure that when our students come back, we have a warm, kind, calm, and predictable welcome back to school. So our Pbis Teams, which stands for Positive Behavior Intervention Supports Teams. So each of our schools has one of those teams. And tomorrow afternoon, all of those teams will be meeting to really go through and make sure that our kind to self, kind to others, kind to environment expectations, that we've reviewed them with our staff, that we have worked really intentionally to make sure that we are kind, that we are warm, that we are welcoming, that we are safely welcoming our students back to school when they come back. And then on Friday morning, all of our Pbis teams will be expected to communicate and discuss with the full staff in their schools, just reviewing those procedures, what that's going to look like. So each school, how they implement those procedures will be a little bit unique to them, but kind to self, kind to others, kind to environment is common expectations across the district, and each school will be taking time tomorrow afternoon and then Friday morning to make sure that we're clear and ready to welcome our students back warmly. We're also using this time then to make some steps forward on parts of our strategic plan. So we are working to continue to develop our scope and sequences. So our goal by the end of the year was to have scope and sequences in place, K through 12 for all of our courses. So coming up Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon, our staff will be working from K to 6 to get their first drafts of science and social studies together. We haven't done science and social studies yet for K through 6, so that'll be the afternoon there. Then for 7 through 12, depending on the team and the course, in different places. But our goal is by the end of the day Friday to have either a first or second draft for many of our secondary courses of scope and sequence in place. So our CAS team will be providing support with that, along with our assistant principals and some members from central office, so that by the end of the day Friday, we should have really good first drafts in place, K through 6 for science and social studies. We already have good first drafts in place for math and ELA, and the arts and physical education. So we should be in a pretty good place for there. We also are getting a little bit of a head start then as well with work on our teaching early literacy. So our K through 2 teachers will also be having sessions on Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon on some of the science of reading connected to Foundations, which is the resource that we have adopted actually several years ago, aligned to how our brain works when we learn how to read. So all of our kindergarten, first grade, and second grade teachers will be having professional learning with 2 of our early literacy specialists on the science of reading and specifically Foundations. So what these 4 days allow us to do, and we want to make sure we're taking advantage of them, are to kind of accelerate a couple parts of our strategic plan and to move up a little earlier in the schedule, work on the social studies and science scope and sequences, finish the secondary scope and sequences, and get a bit of a head start on the early literacy that we otherwise would have started work on over the summer. So that's the next 4 days we're working on.
And the list took a while to share because there's candidly a lot on the list. And I just want to applaud our staff for stepping up and working with one another and allowing folks to lean on each other as we say, oh, I need help in these areas, and identify Foundations, for example. And we gather people around to make sure they had the supports they needed. But again, our goal is to make sure we're keeping people as safe as we can, but we also recognize that we have a lot of work to do in a very short period of time, so we're trying to be as efficient and as effective with our time as we can be. And candidly, these few days this week, as you heard Ross mention, I know the acoustic's a little rough in here, I just want to echo the point that we're going to be months ahead of schedule on some areas of our strategic plan because of this time we have together. Yep. So again, I just want to thank folks for, again, their flexibility and again, didn't have a lot of time to plan this week, but everybody dropped everything to come together, and I just truly appreciate the leadership of our teachers and support staff and our building level leaders. And that's what I have for you tonight. But if I can also request a brief executive session after the meeting to discuss legal matters.
Okay.
Before we moved from Ross's conversation, coming back from the holiday, and maybe this is a Carol question, have we spiked at all with adults being out?
Yes, we have. There are more adult cases now than there have
Can you
been.
talk to the microphone, Carol? Yeah, thank you. It catches it better for the TV, but also in here. Thanks.
Yes, Mark, so your question, we have had more cases recently in staff members than we have had earlier this year or even last year. So we are at a point where we do reflect what is seen in the media and on the news that you're watching, so that we are reflecting that in our staff as well.
So my question then, I guess, pivots to you, Jeff. What indicators will we use coming into next week on if the spike, if we can even get our classrooms covered, or if it's so high that we need to maybe let another week calm down with the COVID spike?
The question is, at what point are we confident that we can return and we have enough people? And we have a plan to reach out to our staff on Thursday, I think it is, Thursday afternoon, to get an assessment of where we are. So we should have a really good idea by the end of the week what the beginning of next week looks like. But to your point, there are some things we cannot predict. And again, some adjustments we'll have to make like we did today, well, with the board meeting to shift to the location, but also on when to shift school. And Ross, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and this is where our partnership with Dr. Ganesh has just been so important all throughout, because he's been modeling with us now for a couple of years. So we can look, and he shows us, exactly what the trend by county is with COVID cases. And so, this is where, when we met with him last week, and he pulled up Lorain County and said, look, the peak for Lorain County is New Year's Day, and then we should start to see a decline later in the week. And he's been extremely accurate, with his predictions all throughout, and we have no reason not to trust him again on this one.
And I guess I just want to drive the point that we are looking at real indicators, and we're just not making up a decision when we wake up in the morning what's going on.
We are
And I just
looking
think
at
the
trend
community-
data and all the potential outcomes that come from that trend data. That's correct.
Outstanding. Thank you all.
So we should have an idea of the confidence of tomorrow based on how close we were today and yesterday and so on. So it's updated daily.
Thank you.
I was talking with Courtney earlier, and she had a
Barbie,
good-
can you talk in your microphone? I'm sorry, I just can't hear very well in here.
I was talking with Courtney earlier, and she had a good question. Courtney, maybe you can even explain a little better.
I was wondering, if for example, Admiral King, we have 10 teachers out at Admiral King, but we're better at the other schools. Is it an option to just close? So maybe Admiral King, we either go virtual or close for a couple days, but keep the other schools open? Is that an option instead of going virtual as a whole district?
Yeah, the question is it appropriate, realistic, feasible to just close one school if one school happens to be short on staff? And the short answer is yes.
Okay.
And it's no different than how we would handle a calamity day if a pipe burst or the heat was out. So
Okay, that's
there are
fine.
some times we can do that.
Okay,
And I
thank
think we might see that if there's an outbreak at a school where, we
Right,
just have to
and
react.
then we can kind of move those subs
Exactly.
to the
Shuffle.
other schools that might
Exactly.
help.
We're going to need to be
Yeah.
creative from here on out, and as we have been for the past couple of years. And again, I just can't applaud our staff enough for their
Of
resiliency
course.
and their
Yes.
willingness to just constantly drop in and do jobs that are far outside their job
Yeah,
descriptions, just
I
to make
agree.
sure our kids and families have what they need.
Yes.
Speaking of applauding staff, I would like to say thank you to all of you. I've seen a lot of you on Zooms and even I wasn't a part of, but you guys were a part of. Just to thank you guys for not taking days off, even though you needed the days off, but to make sure that there was some sort of a plan or process, thinking about students and staff and their safety. We really appreciate you guys and putting kids first and the staff first over the holiday break.
And thank you, and I appreciate that, and I'll make sure to spread that on to others too. And I think what Barbie's talking about is that the offices were closed on Friday and Monday for the new year, but we had computer screens full of squares with people trying to solve the problem of how best to make sure we kept our kids safe. So, thank you.
Okay, being that we're all over the place, I think Jay had something he wanted to say for just a second before we do the announcement of the next meeting.
Executive session.
I have two things I'd like to mention. First thing I'd like to do is publicly thank Mark Ballard for his leadership in the last 12 months, getting us through this minefield that has been between here and Columbus, and getting us to the point where the future looks better than the past. And I appreciate that, Mark. The second thing is not as positive, and Lorain Schools lost a dear friend just the other day in Charles Neely. I met Charles and his wife Sue when I was at Southview. They were very active in the Booster Club, and had this been a normal basketball Tuesday, Charles would be out here taking tickets, but instead he succumbed to COVID, and I just think that we should all keep his family in our thoughts and prayers.
Thank you.
Certainly gonna miss that smile. Okay, the next board meeting would be, ordinarily, it would be January the 10th. Do we need that board meeting, or should we put it off until, or set it?
Can we schedule it? And again, the reason I hesitate is that some of the people who are in charge of agenda items, which I'm guessing is why this is a little clean, are out with COVID. So my guess is there's a few things stacked up, and I guess I'll defer to Carol. Do you have things that need to be approved in the next few weeks?
We always have stuff to approve.
Yeah.
However, it is up to the board. We can wait if needed, but we can also have items for upcoming week as well.
Okay, so we'll schedule it, and we can always cancel.
We'll talk between. Thank you.
Okay, and next board meeting will be January 10th, 5 o'clock at Lorain High School. Okay, I need a motion to go into executive session
To discuss legal matters. Yes, thank you.
to discuss legal matters.
So move.
I know we're twisted all around here, but we need, and I'm usually on the other side of this, so it's important to me. We missed hearing of the public.
Missed hearing of the public. Hearing of the public.
Okay, I didn't, this thing is circled in yellow, and would you like to have, well, we can have a hearing of the public if anybody would like to speak before we close it.
I almost want to get up.
For force of habit.
Summer? Nothing? Okay.
Okay, being that we
Barbie?
have. Okay, being that we have nothing, could I have a motion for executive session?
So move.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Ms. Nazario, yes. Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And I just need about 5 minutes, and there will be no recommendation for a vote afterwards.
You want in the room here?
Just want to step in here real quick.
Do we need a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Nazario, yes, and Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And then, oh, sorry, adjournment.
We need a
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Roll
Mr.
call, please.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Ms. Nazario, yes, Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Hit the hammer.
Boss lady doing.
She's doing all right. Yeah, yeah.
Nobody wanted to do that.
No.
I think everything's.
There are way too many, well, there's really not a lot of.